Hello, and welcome to the Gem Stream, a production of the Gem State Substack. I'm your host, Brian Allman. I have a great interview for you today, but first, if you haven't already subscribed at gemstate.substack.com, please go there and do that now. Free subscribers get 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 free posts a week, while paid subscribers get early access to articles as well as videos and podcasts. For the price of a cup of coffee a week, you can support me in my work as I bring you the information you need to know to save our state. With nearly 200 precinct committeemen, representing a population of over 500,000 people, including nearly 150,000 registered Republicans, the Ada County Republican Central Committee is the largest such body in the state. As my readers know, 6 of the 9 officers of the ACRCC suddenly resigned last month, right before a regular meeting. The ACRCC met in a special meeting this past week to fill those now vacant seats. The person they elected to serve as chairman of the ACRCC for the next 6 months was Thad Butterworth, who joins me today. So, Thad, hello. It's good to see you, and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you, Brian. It's good to see you too.
Now, chairing any county committee is a big deal, I think. It's an important position, but Ada County really is an entirely different animal. What have you found in the last few days as you've taken on this role, and what are your first priorities?
There's a lot of work to be done. That's the number one thing I found, which is, it's good. It's just, I tell people that there's some similarities between this and what I do in corporate life, which is where I go in and help teams get fixed and help them, find their problems and get things solved. And there's a lot of similarities between what we're dealing with right now in the Ada County Central Committee and what I do in the corporate world. And so there's a lot that feels familiar, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I enjoy it. There's a big challenge to it because there's lots of problems to solve. But other than that, I'm doing a lot of talking, texting, emailing, a lot of communication with people, a lot of meetings. And that part I enjoy. I like getting to talk to people and getting to know more about them. And so this part of it has been really fun, even if it is a tiny bit exhausting.
Well, I appreciate your time taking a few moments to talk with me, even amidst all the chaos and busyness.
Yeah.
So we were all surprised, I think, by the resignations of the former officers. What led you to decide to stand for this position yourself? What made you think that this is the right fit for you?
Well, there's a couple factors. One is when I first became a precinct committeeman, I really did notice a lack of cohesive team unit. And of course, this was one of the things that I observed throughout the first year and a half of working with the Central Committee is there's a lot of infighting. There was a lot of just not the best team culture. And I don't think it was by design. I just think not everybody sees a group like this, they think political and they don't think team. Well, I've done this in volunteer organizations and I've done it in corporate world. And for me, I saw an element that was really lacking, which was just that teamwork. So that's one of the big things that I'm really wanting to help bring together. I think we've got a great nucleus of people. The Central Committee has some really talented people in it. And the biggest thing we need to do is just give them the ability to do what they're good at and give them a goal to shoot for. And quite frankly, with what we have coming, with the elections and primaries and the March caucus, we've got enough work that we can get people moving towards a goal. And I think we can accomplish it. And that was really the motivating factor, was looking at what's going on and saying, I can help with that.
Cool. Well, hopefully you're settling in and you can make that a reality.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did you get involved in politics in the first place? Everybody has a different story that leads them to this arena. What got you involved and what has motivated you to stay involved?
So that is an interesting story. I've always kind of paid attention to politics. This is going to set my age a little bit. I was of a cognizant age during 1980, and the Reagan and Carter election was the first one that for some reason that captured my attention, and I just always kind of followed it. I followed it on the national level for a lot of years, and really didn't pay that much attention to what was going on in Idaho. But I was following the national elections that seemed to be the big one everybody talks about on the news and all that. But so what drew me into the local stuff was I have a friend that I worked with at one point, and he was connected with people, because of homeschooled movements and stuff like that. And a particular legislator at the time had reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm looking for some ideas on this issue." And so my friend forwards me the email and says, "You've always got ideas. What do you think?" And so I sent back 5 quick ideas, and the next thing I know, I'm getting an email directly from that legislator saying, "Hey, can we meet?" And that is how I ended up here. That was several years ago, but what was interesting is he just connected me with a bunch of people, and I started working with them, and off and on over the years as time has ebbed and flowed, and I had bandwidth. We raised 3 boys. They're all grown now, so there were times where that was fairly intensive, in the junior high and high school years, but it's still, there was always that piece there, and every once in a while I'd get a call from somebody, "Hey, will you tell me what you think about this?" Or "How would you message this?" Just little things here and there. And then we started to see some things happening in the state that I got involved with, and arranged some groups to go down and testify at the Capitol for certain subjects. And then Meridian, we moved to Meridian about 6 years ago. We'd been in Boise before, moved to Meridian, and immediately after, there were some things that started happening in Meridian, and I saw there was a really big need to kind of bring people together. And that's kind of what drew me in. I ended up working with Conservatives and I founded the Meridian chapter, and worked with that for several years. Grassroots organization, great organization. Of course, now, as I told him, I would love to stay and help, but there is no possible way to do this. So I'm advising them on finding their next director. But that was just kind of what drew me into here. And then I did make a run for the Senate in 2020 or 2021, I believe, was the primary for that. Yeah. And was unsuccessful in that. But as part of the advice I was given, I was told, yeah, also run for precinct committeeman. And so that was what got me here.
Well, that is quite a journey. I have to say, you don't look old enough to remember the Reagan-Carter race. One of my early memories is staying up to watch the 1992 presidential election returns, George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. And I've been, like you, I've been interested in national politics. But once I moved to Idaho, I found that local politics not only matters more, but it's easier to get involved.
Yeah.
So there's not a very big wall between politicians and people here in Idaho. You can go meet your legislators, even meet, governors and attorneys generals, and people who make these important decisions. They're not walled off. You can just talk to them.
Yeah. When we lived over in Boise, one of our senators was right there in my neighborhood, lived, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks away. And so I would talk to him. He wasn't always happy with it when I talked to him, but he knew who I was. It was kind of funny. And then moving to Meridian, we lived really close to our senator as well. Again, within easy walking distance. And so I got to form some relationships with them, with both of them, and really enjoyed that. They're just people too, whether we like their decisions or not. And it's always interesting to hear what motivates them.
So in 2022, you ran for state senate to succeed Regina Bayer.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you didn't succeed in that contest, but a couple questions about that. First, did you get to know Senator Bayer and her family through that process?
Yes. And Regina's awesome. I love her. She was just great in the legislature. It was very interesting because she knew kind of the hot button issues really well. And if she had to make a decision that she thought the conservatives might question, she would call me and explain why, which honestly, I love that. You've always got to educate people on what you see, because there's a lot of bills that get passed with good intentions, and then you see the results and they're like, that wasn't what we wanted to have happen. So, but yeah, I did get to know her and her husband decently well. I've talked with Cliff a little bit here and there, just as we've worked through some of the political stuff. Great family, great people, and really appreciate all they've contributed to Idaho.
So what did you learn in that run? One of there's a book by Scott Adams, the guy who does Dilbert, where he
Yes.
talks about how failing, instead of being just something that's a problem you want to avoid and regret, it's an educational experience that you can use to build on your next endeavor. So, running for office, even if you don't win, I imagine you come away with a wealth of experience and knowledge and ideas.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I learned was it for some conservatives, there's this tendency to just do like these 3-month campaigns is what I call them. It's, hey, we need somebody in this position. Will you please run? And they get somebody to agree to run, but you've got the super short time window where you're trying to get your contributions. You're trying to, get your volunteer base going and do all the graphics, do all the work that's required to run. But it's super compressed and it's not super effective. And so one of the things I learned is I'm talking to people all the time now about, let's be strategic. Let's think through long games. If you want to run for office, great. That's a noble thing, by the way. I do not agree that politics is inherently bad. I think the state it's in is because people who tend to be good don't want to get involved because it looks so bad right now. But that's sort of crazy wheel of continued badness in politics. But I think it's a good thing to do. But let's get started with now. Let's get your name recognition out there. Let's have you work on some campaigns. Let's have you interface with certain political figures. Let's get you into what's going on, so and you're not walking into a situation that you know absolutely nothing about, and then you're surprised by all the results.
That sounds like the sort of thing that a Republican Central Committee can get involved with to prepare candidates for what they're going to face.
It actually is, and it's a big part of what I think is strategic and needs to happen. The more I have dug into what central committees do and the influence they have, the more I'm convinced that, we complain a lot about what's going on in the political realm, but the central committee is a great place to start, because you get trained in how to interface with people in the political realms. You learn how to build the networks. There's all this learning that takes place there, and that's what makes for a great candidate, because you walk in knowing what to expect and knowing what to do.
So having been involved with Conservatives of a political advocacy organization, a PAC, and also run for office, and now you're the chairman of the Ada County GOP. How do you see the differences between legislative races, a PAC, and party politics, and what's similar between them?
Okay. Differences. Campaigns are very interesting because they tend to be a little bit more on the chaotic side. You're just constantly running and talking to people and handing out lit and doing all that. Whereas with the PAC, and so my involvement with that was more on the organizational side and not so much the PAC side. So there's two sides to conservatives of. I don't know that most people know that, but there's the PAC side, which deals with the finances, raising money, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the side that is the activist side. What's interesting about the difference there is that it really is a training ground. So, for example, with conservatives of, one of the things we do is we talk about how would you run for precinct committee? How do you run for office? How do you interface with your elected officials? What kind of things are they going to want to hear from you? that will help them in making a decision. I would say working with conservatives was far closer to what you're dealing with in the Central Committee. It's just the Central Committee's on a whole nother level. It's moving up quite a few floors, or you've just gone from the dirt track that's in your neighborhood to you're now running at Meridian Speedway. That sort of, there's a whole nother level that comes up with it that requires some skill and finesse, and being able to talk with people who don't always get along and help them find common ground. There's a different level to it, but it is pretty different from what I experienced on the campaign trail.
Yep. I see all the time that people want to get involved, so they run for precinct committeemen, and then they show up at the reorganization meeting. And obviously, if they haven't been involved, they don't know what's going on. Come in without really a knowledge of how meetings are run, Robert's Rules of Order, the fact that we have bylaws. I mean, it honestly, after me getting involved, it took me probably a year or two to really grasp that a PC represents their neighborhood on both the legislative district committee and the county committee. And I like to think I can figure things out. And if it took me that long, I think most people just don't quite know how the system works. And I was even talking to someone the other day who was, preparing people to run for legislature. And his first question to them was, okay, what are the duties of a legislator? We have this big government and these systems and party organizations, and people want to be involved. And it's like, I think people need more guidance, more direction, more help. And how do you see, your role and the role of the Central Committee in raising these people up and getting them prepared to take part in this system?
That's actually, I'm so glad you asked that question, because that is part of the vision I have, is actually in that process of bringing in PCs who we train them again in Robert's Rules of Order. And I can completely relate to you. It took me a good year to figure out the nuances of what we were working with in the Ada County Central Committee. And mostly it was because I would ask questions or go and read and look things up. I would love to see, with what we're developing right now, a very strong and formalized training where we get it right after the election. We get our new PCs together and go, okay, this is how Robert's Rules works. This is the basics of it. This is how you communicate and market, and this is how you talk about things for PR sake. These are the things you can do. Get our PCs connected to some of our legislators and helping as much as they can, hanging out with them, learning what's going on, learning how the legislature works, and then helping them learn fundraising skills. You got to have that as a candidate. I mean, you just absolutely have to. But you get them all the skills so that within a term or two, they actually could make a really successful run at a higher office, a legislative type office. So that's the goal I have now. Of course, the most of that fits within the operational committee, which as a chairman of the Central Committee, I don't control it. I'm an ex officio member of that board, but I do have influence. And so I'll be talking with our first vice chair, Ryan Spoon, and helping him, and we'll work together a lot on developing the training materials that'll make our PCs really effective. And then hopefully, eventually, there'll be a few of them that want to move beyond this, and they'll be ready by the time we've finished training them and getting them prepared.
So an effective committee would be one that is, everybody is active and engaged, volunteering, knocking on doors, coming to meetings, but also getting to know the process so that they become the Republican bench, basically, for, the next several elections.
Yes, is one of the things we've had some conversations about, just different people as we're talking, is within the Republican Party, we do lack that thinking of looking at the next generation. Who's the next person that we're going to train to do something? And I think the more purposeful we are on that, the more successful we're going to be. We've got 6 months until our next reorg, 6-7 months, something like that. So we've got a short window of time. We don't know what's going to happen with the election. I'm really hoping that with some of the shifts I'm seeing, that we're going to have a great Central Committee going into 2024 as well. but even then, even without that, I want to get as much set up as I can so that whoever comes after me is successful. And whether it's I've got another 2 years after this term or not, I want to see, I really want to set things up so the next chairman is able to just walk in and be highly successful in everything they're doing.
So are you planning to, after the next reorg, stand for chairman again?
Uh, Most likely. I'm not going to commit to anything yet because this is, 6 months in political terms is a lifetime. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot I can offer and a lot I can help with, and I'm completely willing to do it. And the fact is, I enjoy this. As stressful as it is at times, I do enjoy what we're doing, and so I'm more than happy to help out. But I also serve at the pleasure of the committee. So if they don't like what I'm doing, there will be another leader. That's totally fine. But I just feel like there's so much we can do, and if we can get things set up to where we create a really great bench for legislators, even for chair positions, I'm looking out for who would be the next chairperson after me, or the next person that has the real potential to do this, that I can train, and as I'm learning these lessons, pass them along, say, do this, don't do that, just give them some helpful pointers so that when they walk in on their first day after the election, they know exactly what they need to do.
I think one of our biggest problems in politics is we don't pass along lessons. We don't prepare succession plans.
Yeah.
I'm reading for an article I'm working on as we record this. I'm reading about the history of the presidential primary in Idaho. And for more than a century, our legislature has been grappling with it, trying to figure out how to make it work, balance the integrity of parties with the need to get voter participation. And they still haven't figured it out, obviously, because we've got this initiative coming up. And I think, it's kind of the same thing at the lower level as well. You learn what works, what doesn't, and then you need to pass that on to the next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just going through the same motions and not advancing.
Yeah. Well, so this is one of my volunteer experiences where it really becomes relevant here. When we let's see here, I went to high pay at, and then ended up down here in Boise for college, all that. And then after my wife and I were married, not too long after, we went to Portland for a while. And when we came back with a couple that was starting a church in our area. And uh outside of here, I'm a musician, so I was helping them with all their music stuff. And basically, I helped start the worship department in the church, and I started working with youth right away and just kind of, training some of the musicians, working with them. But I was always kind of looking at that, who's the next person? And I had one of the young ladies who's really sharp, very good with leadership skills, and worked with her for the first 8 years. And then with family times and needs and adjustment, I stepped out, she stepped into that role, and she has just done a fantastic job. I get to do the cool fun stuff now, which is just, experiment, start things, hand them over to other people. But it's that kind of mentality that says there's somebody that's coming up behind you that actually might even take this further than you could, and always be looking for that person, always be looking to train people. And that's how we build a successful party. If every person in the party was looking at their alternate as they're training them as their replacement, we would have such a deep bench that it would be incredible.
It's I think that's a good perspective. And unfortunately, in our political system, there's a tendency to just consolidate power and hang on as long as possible. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California literally dies in office because she's in her 90s and just refuses to step down. And you see so many of our leaders are just they're in that age and they don't have any succession plan. They don't have any idea for what happens. It's like après moi la déluge.
Yeah.
It's whatever happens after you're gone, it's not your problem anymore. Which I've tried to cultivate a long-term view. What am I doing now to create the world for my children and their children and their children, years after? And I think, having that philosophy, even within a party organization, is a great way to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to think more than just one generational. I'm a pretty big reader of history. I love historical stuff. Um, and one of the things that's been really interesting to me is even some of the ancient Hebrew history was, you would watch, they'd have a really good king, and then the next guy after him was really awful, and then maybe one or two, and then they'd get another good one. But it was like they never were thinking through, how do I train my son to take over my kingdom? What is it I need to do to put the integrity and character into him that he will be successful? And it just is it's one of those lessons that you look at and say, I don't want to do that. and I got 3 boys. They're not married yet, so no grandkids, but I'm hoping someday, conservative young ladies, if you'd like to make applications, Brian can put you in touch and we'll get you connected. But anyways, I tease my kids like that all the time, and they're just like, oh, Dad. But I really do think that it's important that we look through the next generation's lens and see, how can we set this thing that we're doing, whether it's in the political or it's in business or it's in church or whatever we're involved with, how do we set up the next generation for success?
So shifting gears a little bit, I have a couple questions about just general, the state of things in politics.
Okay.
Some of the other county committees, most notably Kootenai and Bonneville, they have a rating and vetting system where they, as county committees, as PCs, will go in and rate candidates for whether a nonpartisan election or even a Republican primary, and present that information to the voters as, these are the ones that we as a party have decided are, adhering to the Republican platform. Do you see a role for the Ada County Committee in doing that in the future, or is that something you still want to stay away from?
So my feeling on that right now is that I think we've got bigger things to worry about. We have so many challenges because we've got to kind of re-jump start this party after everybody left. And we've got to stabilize things. I think beyond the May elections, depending on how that all goes, there may be a place for that. But for right now, I don't even want to push into that, because I think it would be a distraction from the really critical task of getting the Central Committee healthy again and functioning. I want to build it into a highly functioning team. Doesn't mean that a situation couldn't arise where we feel the need to do it, but it's got to be driven by the committee, and it's got to be the right timing to do it.
Speaking of timing, this initiative for ranked choice voting is in the news everywhere right now, as these organizations are really pushing it. They're getting people to sign it, and it's kind of dominating the conversation. And if it passes, it could completely change the way we do elections in Idaho. And I think it's fair to say that most everybody in the ACRCC is against this petition. What do Republicans need to do right now to take a stand against it?
They need to be talking to their neighbors, to their friends. If you're in the ACRCC and you're a precinct committeeman, you should be walking your neighborhood, handing out the decline to sign, explaining what's going on. If you belong to a church, you should be talking to your fellow church members about why this is such a bad idea. If you're part of a civic organization, you need to be talking to people. Really, our best option right now is we've got to build our grassroots out and get everybody active and saying, this is the worst thing we could possibly do. This is the kind of thing that results in a downtown Portland or a downtown San Francisco, which we all know what's happened down there. So we really got to push back, but we're up against a media that's not going to help us. They of course love this because it puts Democrats in power in perpetuity. So what we have to do is get everybody to the place where they understand what's going on and understand the dangers. And that just involves telling people, okay, you've got to vote no. Hopefully we can stop it in a county or two so that it doesn't get on the ballot, but we also have to be prepared in case it is on the ballot. And it's going to take everybody talking to everybody to get this defeated.
Another question: what can Republican voters, especially those of us here in Ada County, what can we expect for next year's caucus?
Well, the caucus is going to be, it's actually going to be more fun than people think. I was here in what year was that? That 2012? Uh,
2012.
yeah, I think 2012 was the year we did a Republican Party caucus for the first time. Um, it was the first one we've ever done. It was rough. For multiple reasons. But the one thing that was fun was there's a great atmosphere there. You had Republicans talking to Republicans for the first time in years, so there were some advantages to it. What I love about this one is it's going to be done out in smaller areas. So in your legislative districts, in most cases, you're going to have one or two caucuses, but it's all going to be focused around your area. So you're going to get in there and talk with your friends and neighbors. Maybe some of them you've never met, some of them you've never seen before. You're just going to get some you're going to get some great interaction there. You're going to hear from the candidates, whether it's by video or some other method or a representative. But then you're going to vote, and you can either stay and catch the results live, or you can go home and find out later. It's up to you. It shouldn't be hours and hours. It's going to be very quick. It's going to be secure because it's going to be paper ballot, hand counted, signed, ID required, all that sort of stuff. So it's going to have a really smooth process. And I think actually it's going to be fun. I think people will really enjoy it once we see this happen. As long as us in the precinct committees and the central committees, as long as we do our job, people are going to enjoy it, and it's going to be highly successful.
Personally, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not normal, but I'm a political junkie. I enjoy this sort of thing, and getting together with a whole group of voters to go to talk politics, that just sounds fun to me. And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
speaking of fun, in your speech that you gave to the committee last week, you said you want to make Republican politics fun.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure some people will say, "Wait a second, politics should be very serious." But so how do you make it fun while still, taking seriously the problems that we face?
Yeah. Well, there's so in a lot of organizations I've worked with, there's a lot of serious work that needs to be done. But just because it's serious work doesn't mean that you can't have fun with it. You should have the ability to, you know, interact well with your friends and your coworkers, and making fun events. So I love to do like team building events and those sorts of things. That they always have an element that's fun. But the other part is it really comes down to attitude. And so for me, I have to model that, even even if I've had a stressful day and had, 10 bad calls on my way from my from my home office to down to the central committee meeting. I've got to get out of my own attitude and be lighthearted, make it fun, enjoy being with the people. Those are the kinds of things that help. Doing team events, we've already had some discussions about what kind of fun events we could do around either the election coming up, or even talking about Christmas and holidays, where we're doing stuff that's not so much focused on politics for a few minutes. We're just going to go and hang out with our families, and play some great icebreaker games, get to know each other, that sort of stuff. So that sort of team environment is really important, and making opportunities for it. But it really does come down to the attitude. It's like, if you and I and some of our closer friends that we developed during our time working on the precinct and the political issues, if we were to sit down at a restaurant, we would enjoy it a lot, because we have these commonality points. We've got to build that within the whole committee. Even if we don't agree with people, I have some friends that are a little more to the left, and I still have a great time talking with them, and we have fun. We actually can have fun debating, because it's not, we're always debating the issue and not attacking each other. And that's really, really important, is that we can debate issues and we can have these disagreements, and somewhere in the middle of all that debate, we find answers to problems. And that's another part of making it fun, is you're accomplishing something you're doing it in an environment where you're safe to express opinions and nobody's going to come after you and cancel you.
It does sound fun.
Yeah.
So we are running out of time here because I am on the free version of Zoom.
Ah,
I appreciate your time though. And can you, do you have any final thoughts or ideas if people want to get involved and they're not already?
yeah. Just I'm really optimistic about the future of the Republican Party. I think there are so many great things going on and so many great shifts I'm seeing. And so I want to invite people, yes, come get involved. We have our central committee meetings. Most of the time, our guests are welcome to be there. Uh, a few times they're not, but those we can make really clear. The best thing to do to get involved if you're not currently involved is connect with your precinct committeeman in your local neighborhood. You can look that up on the Ada County website. There's some outdated information on there, but most of your PCs are correct. So do that, get involved. And yeah, just come to one of the meetings, watch what's happening, learn how it works on the internals of the party. It will be very eye-opening and very good for you.
Well, thank you again for your time. Congratulations on your new role, and
Thank
wish
you.
you the best of luck and everything I can do to help.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Thad, for that great interview, and I look forward to seeing what he is able to do as chairman of the Ada County Republican Central Committee going forward. I will put a link to the ACRCC website below in case you want to learn more or get involved. Remember to subscribe at gemstate.substack.com, and I will see you next time.